for Jones, double coverage. Oh, what a catch! Touchdown! 70 yards to Jones. Ridiculous.
But Akers he's got a big leg.
Drills it, and it's off the crossbar and through. Wide open man. A flick into the end zone by Jerome Simpson. Oh, goodness.
And Westbrook stops at the 1 and goes down to a knee. Why would he do that? That's crazy.
All right, the 15th Mile High Affiliates draft is complete. There were some great picks, some questionable picks, some ridiculous picks. It was an interesting draft overall, and that's what we're here today to talk about, is just how wild the 15th Mile High Affiliates draft that took place this past Sunday. Eric Lansing here with you, along with Mikey Renault, and we bring back Todd back on here. Todd, thanks for joining us here.
Absolutely. Hey, had to take the night off,
Take the night. Have you some better things to do?
No, just to take a break, from all my fantasy football knowledge, it was just too much,
It was just overflowing. You just couldn't keep it in. It was just oozing out of every orifice of your body.
I think you want to just give the rest of the league, a night off from all my, great wisdom.
Well, we appreciate it. I think everybody really liked that you took the night off. Mike, how are you doing over there?
Relaxed.
Relaxed? You feel good?
Feel good.
Yeah, the draft is over. A lot of us anticipate and get excited for the draft, and now we can kind of look back on it, and a lot to talk about for sure. Before we get into all of that, let's get into some news or what's some news out there. And we're not going to talk about every little piece of news because we really want to talk about the draft, but we will talk about this.
Extra, extra, read all about it. Extra, extra, read all about it.
As second-year wide receiver Dorial Green-Beckham was traded from the Titans to the Eagles. A few days ago, Green-Beckham had a solid rookie season. He was drafted by NWA this year in the 11th round. He was traded for a backup lineman, which I think tells you everything you need to know about how the Titans thought about him and his work ethic and so forth. But the question I'll ask you guys is, does this help or does it hurt DGB? Mikey, we'll start with you.
I guess it helps him. Anything getting out of that situation in Tennessee would. You could tell that the coaching staff was kind of getting tired of him, so it's one of those situations where it's a second chance for him to kind of prove himself in a new environment.
Gives him a new fresh start. Gives Bradford a big 6'6" target to throw to, especially in the red zone as well. And then obviously, kind of a veteran quarterback, maybe be able to get in this guy's head and say, listen, you give him better work ethic and as well. So I think it's a good thing. So it's another target on the other side for Jordan Matthews as well. So I think it helps. I think it helps both the Eagles and Beckham as well.
I don't know if it helps him. I agree it's a new place for him, but is Sam Bradford that much better than Marcus Mariota? A guy that he spent the year with that practice and getting to know. Now, obviously, it didn't seem like he was running precise routes or going at full speed. I don't know the situation that's over there. All I know is some of the management said that he just didn't get it. So I don't know if that meant as a playbook type of scenario that he didn't get it or if it was just a knucklehead that he didn't get it. But, you're taking a guy away from a quarterback that he's seen for more than a year to a quarterback that's, in my opinion, worse than Mariota. Mike, you look like you have something to say.
Well, and I'm in agreement with you there. That Bradford's not, the greatest ever. But I think it helps him because in the situation in Tennessee, he was running basically as the fourth receiver behind, Rashard Matthews, Kendall Wright, Tajay Sharp. And now he at least gets a chance to maybe see some field time because really he's only running behind Jordan Matthews. He's probably right there with Nelson Aguilar. So in that sense, it may be helpful to him.
Sure, he ends up being higher on the depth chart, getting more opportunities. Yeah. And I will say you're wearing your headset backwards, so if you want to take that off and switch it up right now, it just doesn't look right at all.
Is it really bothering you?
No, it's not bothering me. We'll just leave it alone. We'll edit this part out. I was like, that doesn't look right from this the way you kind of wrapped it. All right, anyway. So I know G was excited. He posted on the Yahoo Messenger that he seemed like he was excited that he was in a new situation. So we're excited for him. So in terms of that, you kind of mentioned it. Who steps up in Tennessee Rashard Matthews gets a boost, I guess. He's been getting a lot of early season pub and what he was going to do. And so do you feel like those guys kind of step it up?
Yeah.
I mean, do you feel like they're better wide receivers than DGB? And, I mean, does it help their fantasy value?
I think it helps Matthews in particular. I mean, I think he was already kind of a sleeper kind of candidate. And so with him not there, I mean, I think it only helps him. Whether it helps, the value of a Kendall Wright, who obviously didn't get drafted. Tajay Sharp was the Mr. Irrelevant.
Yeah. Probably the best Mr. Irrelevant. That's the trivia I should have looked up. The best Mr. Irrelevant in the history of the MHA. Well, maybe we'll do that for the next show. But that's not a bad Mr. Irrelevant, I'll have to say.
No, not at all. But then I don't know how much of a passing team Tennessee's really going to be either. So, that one's a hard one to answer. I mean, they have that two-headed monster at running back. So I don't know with them really being a passing team that's really going to affect those guys all that much.
So Dorial Green-Beckham in a new home. Now I'm going to go through these news and notes. If you guys want to say something about it, great, but I'm just going to kind of go through them. Ezekiel Elliott returns to the practice field. That's got to be great for Kilgore Trout, who drafted him in the second round. So that's good for all the Elliott owners. Brashard Perriman, is that poor guy ever going to get his career going? They say there's no timetable for his return. That he'll be back in June. Way back in June is when he suffered a partially torn ACL in the OTAs, and he was drafted in the 4th round by Notorious CUP. Brandon LaFell may have to have surgery on a torn ligament in his hand, and he was taken in the 14th round, and that helps Moi, who picked up Tyler Boyd, who should be the number 2 now over there. And finally, Josh Brown, still going through the concussion protocol, didn't make the trip to San Diego this weekend. So another guy that was drafted that there's some question marks. Nothing super serious, but things that people need to keep an eye on as we go along. So let's kind of get into the draft talk a little bit. Obviously this news is very important. We still have about 23 days or 25 days before the first NFL game on Thursday night, so everyone has to be on their phones, on their computers to make sure that if something goes down, that you can pick up the replacements, depth chart battles, injuries, all that stuff. And getting into some of this post-draft talk, and since we are so far away from the regular season, did that change the way you guys drafted certain situations? Did you just figured it was just the normal draft, or did you figure maybe you had a situation where it was between 2 guys and he's a little more injury prone and I don't know enough about the depth chart battle that I decided to go a little safer? Did that come up for any of you guys? Todd?
I mean, not really, because I think that can cause you problems, because if you're kind of second guessing yourself a little bit, injuries happen. Like I said this before, another podcast said that whether you're drafting 3 weeks before the season starts or 2 days before the season starts, injuries are going to happen regardless. So you just have to draft based on what you're projecting, what the season is going to project for each player. So there wasn't. I came with the same mindset that I would have if we were drafting on the 28th.
Yeah, and you just pretty much have to use the information you have at the time. We drafted early, so I'm sure there's going to be things that happen within the next couple weeks that had we been drafting later, I would have been like, well, damn, I wish I would have known that,
Sure.
2 weeks ago. But I think when you're going into it, you can't look at it that way. You just got to go with your research, go with your gut, and live with the consequences.
Okay, so no real changes there. Continue on here. Did any of you pay or how much did the preseason, when we got 1 weekend of preseason before the draft, guys, there was all kinds of great stories to talk about. You talked about the 2-headed monster in Tennessee. Henry and DeMarco Murray had really great games. Sammy Coates, not very good game at all. Melvin Gordon looked really good. There's a lot of storyline. Des Bryant looked really good. So I don't know if that made a difference for Quayne. He took him at the end of the first round. Did any of the preseason stuff matter to you guys?
Not to me.
Okay.
But I think that it might have mattered to some other people, because just looking at the draft, you mentioned Sammy Coates, who didn't have a very good game. And I know there was a lot of hype about him before that game started. And he kind of slipped a little farther than I thought that he might. And so I felt like I was able to get him at a decent value. But yeah, I think that it affected. DeMarco Murray went 4th round. You have Melvin Gordon that went in the 8th round. I didn't hear a lot of people talking about him before that first preseason game.
Yeah.
So.
In fact, it was all negative from what I heard. Like, he still wasn't getting the playbook and still wasn't busting through the hole at the speed the coaches wanted him to. But game time, he looked all right.
Yeah.
Maybe that made a difference to the owner that drafted him. I forget. I don't know who drafted him off the top of my head, but yeah. So not a big difference.
No.
Okay.
I really didn't. Yeah.
I mean, I try not to get caught up in it either. But I mean, I will say, like, Tyler Boyd played well. I mean, did it? I mean, it didn't change. I mean, I didn't draft him very early compared to, maybe some of the other rookie guys. But I mean, it gave me a little bit of like justification that okay, maybe, maybe I'll have to give him a shot. But I was probably going to draft him at that spot regardless. So it's just interesting to see. I mean, like, if anybody was worried about DeMarco Murray, like, maybe that helped. Like, okay, maybe he's got some ability left. Maybe he's got some gas in the tank, and we'll take a chance on him. Or I feel better about taking. Maybe they were thinking about taking him at that spot anyway. Where did he go in our draft here? I know he went earlier in the rounds.
Yeah, round 4.
There you go. And so maybe a little justification. I don't know. So that's just we only got one preseason. All right, so let's get into the draft talk. Wild draft, crazy draft. There's a lot to talk about. Let's just start from the very first pick of the draft because I think that's where you have to start. Adrian Peterson went number 1 overall. React. Go.
Really not a huge surprise.
What, Todd? Get out. You're done. Get out.
Yep, he's done.
That is the craziest thing that happened in this draft.
But I'm just saying based on name. I'm just based on name. Just based on name. I mean, it was crazy the fact that he went number 1.
If you would have drafted Reggie Bush, okay, I guess that's crazier than Adrian Peterson. Yes, Adrian Peterson is a good running back. He's a productive. He was my number 1 overall running back. But over Antonio Brown.
No, I agree. I would have taken Brown. I would have taken Brown over Peterson in that case.
Okay, so you can agree that it's crazy.
It is a little crazy.
See, and I think even less of Peterson. I didn't even have him rated in my rankings as a first-round pick. I had him as a round 2 guy because in PPR, despite what Todd said in the previous podcast, he doesn't catch passes.
Yeah, but he was still the number 2 overall running back last year.
Yeah, he's also older.
At 31.
Right.
But 31, not 31 like body-wise. 31 maybe just the number on his license because the fact he's been so injured and he probably still has some left and still has.
We're missing the point.
Right.
It's not Antonio Brown.
Right. And I didn't want to rail too much on Peterson. That's not what the question was.
Yeah, I mean,
it was about how big a shock it was, which it was huge. When that name came out, I was just like, wow. Why am I not drafting second?
Right. I mean, Supreme Clientele Ryan definitely got a gift in his lap, the biggest gift of the draft. I was trying to justify, Ryan, for Robbie, maybe he was trying to do something different. Maybe, he's still looking for his first championship. He's looking for more playoff appearances, so maybe he's trying to go outside the board because in years past, the guys he thought should have been number 1, so maybe he was just like, you know what, I'm just going to go do something different. But I don't know, it just that Brown is like the safest guy, he gets points for catches, he gets yards, he gets touchdowns, and a high-flying offense. He's really the only best option they have. I mean, they have other options, but he's by far the best one, at least in terms of the wide receivers. Great quarterback. There's just nothing wrong with picking Antonio Brown. And there's a lot of things you could say about Adrian Peterson. So that was pretty wild. I think we all were just like floored when that happened. Now for us, we're like, okay, great. I mean, someone's gonna fall to us. Well, maybe not great for Todd. Todd, we swore up and down that you were going to pick Adrian Peterson at your 7th spot, but wow, didn't make it there to you.
It didn't not even close, Eric. Not even close. But hey, there were still great options. So
I mean, if you just look at Brown's points from last year, 289 points, and Adrian Peterson wasn't bad. He had 235. But that makes a lot of difference when you're winning games every week and going to the playoffs and just having that secure. Now, it's fantasy football. No one's 100% sure going to get through a season unscathed. It's football. They're out there trying to hit each other and knock each other out. But even at the whole spread, someone obviously didn't listen to the podcast because we've been saying since the beginning, wide receivers is where it's at. It's where most of the points are scored these days, and you can wait on running back. And I applaud him for doing something different, but I think it really hurts him in the end of the day.
Yeah, the thing with Brown is you don't get any bad weeks.
Yeah. In fact, he gives you 30-point weeks,
Hard to pass up.
It's definitely interesting. May have been the biggest surprise. At least in our opinion. We'll talk about some other ones for sure. All right, let's keep going. Lion Rip, he's got his name back now, so he's excited about that. He takes the first running back off the board with David Johnson. I took him, Aaron kept saying at the draft he passes the eye test. You know how I feel about David Johnson. And over Julio, though, I don't know. What do you guys think?
A lot of hype from last year. We see what we saw what he did last season, so it carries over, and a lot of people are just like, oh, this guy's gonna be the next great running back, especially in the offense that he's in, another high-powered offense as well. So I can see where Aaron thought, okay, yeah, David Johnson, he can be my bell cow, and and he catches passes too.
Sure does.
He does, and obviously so. It's hard to argue with that one. It's really hard to argue with that one. I mean, obviously, yeah, Julio, because obviously a lot of mock drafts we've all seen, it was, Brown, Odell Beckham Jr., and Julio Jones. And, and obviously we always predict this draft. We always try to predict this draft. And, guess what people are going to do? Oh, we are so wrong. It's
so wrong. We'll talk about how wrong you are after we get out of this first round. We'll go back to our mock draft that we did in the very first show. We'll talk about how wrong we are. Mikey, any thoughts on David Johnson going forth?
Yeah, I mean, I thought David Johnson was a first-round pick, but I just don't like where he went. I can see what Aaron was trying to do, and he thought maybe he figured he could get some decent receivers later on in the draft. But if you look at the receivers he got, obviously he was wrong.
Sure. I mean, Larry Fitzgerald, his first guy, Stephon Diggs, who's gotten a lot of good pub. He's gotten a lot of good press.
Way too high.
But, hey, the cat trying to knock over our draft board here as we're trying to do our podcast. Boy, that cat is just trying to make its name here on this podcast. So the next best running back, in my opinion, it was the right one to go off, but over Julio is. You got to give. I mean, I'm sure Kevin, who's in his second year, was happy to get Julio. I was texting him about it, and he goes, "Yep, I'll take him every day at that spot." So he's definitely excited about that. Let's just keep going here. The first and only quarterback to go in the first round was Drew Brees, going to Kilgore Trout. And we've kind of talked about quarterbacks and where they think we should go. I think we can agree that was probably the number one quarterback. At least I moved him up over Cam Newton in my rankings before this draft started. And if you're going to take one, that's the one to take. Any thoughts on him going number 6 overall?
Well, I mean, that's the guy I said should be the one quarterback in the first round all along. I love Drew Brees. So, yeah, I mean, he went right in the middle of the round. I don't really have a problem with that one.
Goes 8th to the Belt Sanders, possibly the best and only great pick from Mr. Alan Cook. Now, when he picked him, I gave him kudos. I thought that was a great pick. Mm-hmm. You trying something different. Alan's still looking for his first championship. I was like, that's ballsy. I like that. Put your balls on the table and grab the best side in, and you don't have to worry about it anymore. So, but I thought it was a fine pick. His best pick. You think from the peanut gallery over there?
Cam Newton wasn't. It was a decent pick in round 3 for him, I thought.
Well, I'm just talking about Gronk.
But Gronk, he's a first round pick. So I mean, there's other guys that were there that you could probably say might have been better. DeAndre Hopkins, AJ Green, those guys. But based on where he was drafting, I think it was an okay pick.
But remember, no Tom Brady for the first 4 games of the season.
Sure, that hurts his value.
But Gronk is still, you just get him the ball, and he'll just, he finds the end zone any way he can. So, yeah, it's not a bad pick. It's,
Sure. I mean, he must not bother him that Brady has the first 4 games off because he picked Edelman with his next pick, but we'll talk about later on in the show about that one in the second round. Jamal Charles surprisingly goes in the first round.
Ugh.
Mikey not liking it.
Well,
not liking it.
This one bothers me because I think Todd's going to get the wrong idea about this. He's going to think that all of a sudden, just because Jamal Charles was overdrafted, which he was, that somehow makes him right for having him ranked as low as he did. Don't get it confused. That's not what this is, Todd. So, yeah, Jamal Charles was overdrafted. He shouldn't have been a first-round pick, but yeah, he shouldn't have been as low as you had him either. So don't get it twisted.
Oh, so close. So I was like, oh, you're right, Todd. No. I think if anything, first round for Jamal Charles, no. I mean, 4th round, maybe.
Well, I don't think he'd have lasted that long.
No.
He probably would have went at least in the middle of the second round, late second round. He probably could have fell down depending on how you think about him. But first round.
Yeah, realistically, if you were G, you could have not taken Jamal Charles there and taken like a DeAndre Hopkins, and Jamal Charles would have still been there at your second pick if
Agreed.
you really wanted it.
Agreed, but I think he knew from the get-go he was taking Cooper at 2. I think that he had that set in stone because I would love. I mean, G would just be incredible with Hopkins, Cooper, and then Demaryius Thomas if that's how it ended up. I mean, maybe he could have went running back, but he could have had Eddie Lacy. And that seems like just on paper, that's a better team from there.
Yeah, Cooper could have been there at 3.
Ooh, I don't know. Well, in my rankings, yes. It would have been close. It would have been close because I have him right around that spot after Nelson, Evans, and Dez Bryant, at least in my rankings. So, yeah, he could have been there. But I think he was set.
Yeah.
I think he knew what he was doing before the draft even started.
Unfortunately for him.
Yeah, because Hopkins falls down to Gonzo Cats, who's a Houston fan in the beginning, so he's got to be doing backflips. He definitely loved that. And Dez Bryant at number 10. Quick thoughts on that? You actually had him in the first round mock draft many moons ago. So you still okay with it? I mean, he had that touchdown catch in that game. So
yeah, I kill you with truth. That's what I do. So if I tell you that somebody's first round pick, more than likely they will be. Not trying to toot my own horn.
No, you're tooting your own horn more than any of us
toot
our own horn.
But no, I think a lot of people might have been worried because of his injury problems last year.
And Tony Romo's injury problems last year.
His injuries. And I think maybe a lot of that went away in that preseason game when everybody saw Dak Prescott and was like, wow.
Yeah.
Maybe that's not going to be a problem. But
we'll see.
I think Queen was smart enough to realize what Dez Bryant was the year before, which is a first-round pick.
Yeah, and he loaded up on wide receivers again, 4 of them in the first 5 picks. So here's how the mock draft went, and see how totally wrong we were. We thought Antonio Brown was going to go first. We thought Julio was going to go second. Odell Beckham third, and then we'll get to talk about your team because you picked Julio in the mock draft, and you ended up going ODB over Julio. So we'll ask you about that later. Hopkins at number 4, that was wrong. So Odell Beckham third was actually the only one that got right. It was Todd who picked him third overall, and he ended up going third overall. But that was it. Hopkins went 4th. Breeze went 5th, so just one pick off there. Adrian Peterson 6th. David Johnson 7th. Le'Veon Bell 8th, and now that was before he got suspended, so that obviously skews things a little bit. Gronkowski 10th, and then Dez Bryant 11th, and A.J. Green 12th. So we just stop doing mock drafts in the future?
Yeah, especially
no, it's fun to do mock drafts. We have to.
Yeah, but for ours, we might as well just close our eyes. We'd probably have a better shot of getting it right. But
no, it wasn't that bad. We were only off on a couple.
Well,
of guys.
it's that Adrian Peterson that kind of shifted the rest of the draft and just made it look worse than probably it was.
But we had 11 of the 12. All you do is swap Le'Veon Bell and Jamal Charles, and we were pretty much
you were right there. I guess that's the positive way to look at it.
Yeah,
I can get on board with that. Let's get into the second round a little bit. One guy that I think we're all kind of split on and where he might go with Devonta Freeman, who ended up going 15th overall to the Gonzo Cats too soon. Went before guys like Ezekiel Elliott and Lamar Miller. Some of your thoughts on him? Do you think that was too soon?
I thought it was a little bit too soon. I was more expecting him to kind of go at the end of the second, early third, because of the timeshare that he's involved in with Tevin Coleman. But I think that people just look at their magazines, which came out months and months ago, and they see how high he's rated there and feel like they had to take him. I have a hard time believing he's going to be better than Elliott and Miller.
I think it was right on there because, Freeman's kind of that second tier of running backs, and like I said, he catches the ball out of the backfield. Like I said, especially in our league, that's really important. So I think, toward the beginning of the second round, I think was, dead on. And, you were talking about the timeshare thing. Just because they say there's going to be a timeshare, that doesn't always happen, through the entire season. Maybe happens maybe 1 or 2 games or something if Freeman's having a bad game, but I'm not really too worried about that. Running back that can catch the ball and is in a second tier, why not? And especially in that offense, they fixed their offensive line a little bit, you hope. So that might be a little bit better, too, for Matt Ryan to get the ball to Freeman as well. And obviously it'll help Freeman's, rushing yards as well. So I think the beginning of the second round, no problems with that.
Are we undervaluing Devonta Freeman?
What?
If we just look at the preseason game, he looked really good. Kevin Coleman looked like garbage. And I know it's just a preseason game, But, I mean, Freeman led our league in points. And if Tevin Coleman ends up being nothing, he probably goes too late in our draft and should have gone earlier in the first round. For a guy that caught 70 balls, I'm not saying he's going to score the 14, 15 touchdowns he ended up with, but if Tevin Coleman ends up just being really crappy and he gets all the production, I think a lot of us are going to look like dopes for waiting.
Hey, I said late second round, all right?
I'm just,
It's not like I was disrespecting him that.
in every magazine I've read, every fan, webcast, podcast, TV show, no, don't pick Devonta Freeman. He's again a time share with Tevin Coleman. Tevin Coleman is with the current management, and the old management was Devonta Freeman, and he could just end up doing similar stuff to this year. He could be David Johnson light. And I don't know. It's just interesting. We'll see how it plays out. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm all over. We're going to talk about Edelman later when we talk about our tough picks, or do you want to talk about it now?
Let's get it out of the way now.
You want to get it out of the way now? So Julian Edelman went pretty early in the second round. Looking at my list, I don't know where you guys had him on your list. I mean, I was not a fan, so I had him pretty low on my rankings, 24th. Wide receiver. Not even 24th overall. My 24th wide receiver. And, what do you guys think?
I had him in round 6.
Round 6, so a little earlier.
Round.
Yeah,
A little earlier than he had him over here.
A lot. You think about it, 17th overall? Are you kidding me? That's unbelievable to me that he would go that high over, guys like Lamar Miller, Ezekiel Elliott, Jarvis Landry, Mike Evans, Le'Veon Bell. How is that possible? And I don't know what Allen was thinking.
Either he knows something we don't, or I just don't know. I mean, he's a decent wide receiver. He's one of Tom Brady's safety blankets. But first of all, Tom Brady's not playing the first 4 games, so I don't know what, unless him and Garoppolo just get on the same page, really quick, then I just don't see it. I just don't see it. I mean, even in that spot, I'd rather draft. I mean, this doesn't sound even crazier than a Julian Edelman pick, but I'd rather draft a third string, fourth string wide receiver at the point.
All right. Man, that's a little that's a little crazy.
That's
Todd.
probably a little.
That's a
nutty.
little crazy.
I mean, I had Edelman going in the 8th or 9th round, if anything.
See, that's a little low to me. In order for Edelman to meet his value where Allen took him, he's going to have to score 12 to 14 touchdowns plus have over 100 catches.
Yeah, I mean, for you to be a second-round guy, for a guy that has never really been in the top 10 at least in the last few years. I mean, maybe back in 2013 when he had 105 catches, but he only had 6 touchdowns.
Yeah, Gronk gets them.
Yeah, Gronk gets those guys, in the end, and then you have Deion Lewis if he's healthy.
They have
LeGarrette
Bennett
Blount, who's and so I just don't see the ceiling because he's looking at the ceiling of if he gets 100 catches, 1,200 yards, and 10 touchdowns, and that is just not going to happen.
No.
He's injury prone. He's already been injured in the OT in the training camps already. I understand where you could see the ceiling would be just incredible, but I just thought that was really too early, and this could end up hurting him.
Maybe Allen just roots for the underdog. He likes that small white guy,
That might be it. That might be it. Interesting pick, and it gets crazier as we go along here. What else stands out to you in the second round? Lamar Miller falling to Mikey could be in that conversation of steal of the draft for a guy that could have gone at the end of the first round, early in the second round. Believe me, I thought about him, but I guess the way people are thinking, well, Houston's not a very good team, but I mean, for an offense that runs the ball as much as they do, I think they were 5th last year. They were first 2 years ago. He's going to get his volume, and he can catch the ball. And so, how thrilled were you when he fell down to you?
Honestly, it was a no-brainer. I think I got that pick out in about 2 seconds. I couldn't really believe what was going on. I mean, you talk about volume. He's never going to leave the field for that offense.
Yeah.
And for running backs, that's incredibly hard to find. I mean, he's going to do great with receptions. Like you said, down near the goal line, and I believe he's going to get all the work down there too. I mean, I was floored. and I was so happy to have him as a part of my team.
Well, we're so happy that you're happy.
Yeah.
I'm glad.
You know, to see Mikey, who just has that 4-leaf clover shoved way up his ass. Things like this happen, and it ends up paying off for him. Mookie Betts in fantasy baseball, and now Lamar Miller in fantasy football.
Ain't that
Just because there's other people that don't know what they're doing, Mikey ends up reaping the benefits.
I like to thank Julian Edelman for making that possible.
Yes, it is definitely. Yes, Cook, you could have had Lamar Miller and look a lot better than you do now, but that just drives me insane. Insane.
Insane in the brain.
Anything else in the second round before we move on? Anything else you can see that stood out? 3 quarterbacks in the first 2 rounds.
And I think you guys know I was higher on Andrew Luck than you guys were, but even I was surprised that he went in the second round.
Yeah, I mean Cam Newton went. What was that? 7 picks later. I don't get it. He could have gotten someone. I mean, like LaShawn McCoy. I mean, Mike Evans. If he wanted a better wide receiver, because his wide receiver's a little sketchy with Gold Tate and Crabtree, so he could have gotten Mike Evans there and gotten Luck the next round. In my opinion, I mean, only one win after Cam Newton. That was Big Ben. I thought that was way too early. So yeah, that was definitely questionable. But I mean, if you like a guy, I guess you like a guy. I don't know.
Yeah, I thought Amari Cooper was questionable where he was taken to, because as I mentioned before, I thought he could have been there in round 3. I didn't think you needed to spend a pick that high on him.
And obviously Elliott, that's going to be the biggest, talk about pressure galore. I mean, whether it's in fantasy or reality, it's going to be all on Elliott. I mean, the Cowboys are like, all right, you're a workhorse. So, I mean, obviously the second round isn't, obviously some mock drafts I've seen, they had Elliott going in the first round. I think that would have been way extreme. So the second round isn't that bad. You just hope, obviously the great offensive line. So I think the Elliott pick was, I don't want to say it's a high risk, high reward. I mean, because it's because the pressure is just, off the charts of what they're expecting him to do his rookie season. I mean, and we even look back on in fantasy or in reality that I don't know even Adrian Peterson when all the hype that he had when he came out that he had this great rookie season. I mean, it took him a minute to get going as well too. So yeah, the Elliott pick is, I mean, if it pans out and does what people are saying you do, and great pick.
All right, so let's get into the best picks, the worst picks, and maybe perhaps the sleeper pick of the entire draft. And then so we'll start with the best picks that you guys love.
I think that you're in love with him. What? That's ridiculous. No, I don't think so. You love him.
Mikey, give me one that stood out to you that you really liked.
I really liked Ryan taking Antonio Brown.
Okay. Well, way to do some research there. You really worked hard. You really took that analysis to to that next level. But why don't you give me something a little off the first couple of rounds? Why don't you?
Well, and this is going to surprise you, but I actually really, really liked your pick of C.J. Anderson in round 4.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. Well, C.J. Anderson's an interesting guy. What is it about him at that spot that you liked? Fourth round for those who don't know.
Yeah, I just really thought that in this offense that, Denver's going to be running the true Kubiak offense now. I view this as kind of like his real breakout year. If he can stay healthy throughout the full season, I think he's going to be a running back that can accumulate anywhere from 1,000 to 1,300 yards rushing, and I think he's going to get a pretty decent amount of touchdowns on top of that.
I agree, but I'll talk more about my team later. Todd, what pick that you really liked in this draft outside the top 2?
Well, a player that I was maybe going to draft would be the Mikey had was Danny Woodhead. I think obviously, especially in the fifth
you
round,
didn't get him.
I didn't get him, and because usually when I've drafted him before in previous years, I've gotten him later. But obviously, after I've pretty much hyped him up, thinking he's the greatest thing, since Jim Brown and Barry Sanders, Mikey, drafted him, and I decided to go with Deion Lewis instead. But I think obviously
we'll get to our hate picks in a little bit.
Okay,
we'll get to our hate picks in a little bit.
But I think but just obviously where Mikey got him, in the 5th round, that's pretty good just because he is a PPR machine. So getting him in the 5th round, I think it was a great pick. As much as I don't want to give any more props to Mikey than anything, but I think it was a great pick, though.
I'm going to say a pick, and it was a relatively early pick, but I like Aaron's Le'Veon Bell. And for the biggest reason I like that is because he has David Johnson and he has DeMarco Murray. So he has coverage in that regard in terms of running backs. And so while, it being early for a guy that's going to be missing the first 4 games, that's the first thing that kind of jumps out at you. He's got people to take care of the situation in the meantime. And so for a guy that's going to be rested up, he's going to be ready for the playoff push. I thought that was a solid pick. If you're going to pick Le'Veon Bell, 3rd round was the place to do it, and he made sure he had DeMarco Murray in the very next round.
I agree, and you don't know how hard that was for me.
Oh, really?
Had a hard time
you thought
choosing.
about him there?
Yeah, I was scratching my head trying to choose between Mike Evans and Le'Veon Bell, and just because of the suspension, I kind of went with Mike Evans there. But yeah, I agree. I think it was a very solid pick for Aaron.
Anybody else? Any other ones that stand out to you guys? Anybody could just chime in?
Yeah, Sammy Watkins.
Yeah, that could be technically the steal of the draft. He went in the 5th round, middle of the 5th round. I know I was praying that he'd fall to me when I saw him kind of dropping, and I'll have to go through my list and where I had him. But, that's incredible value at that point.
Yeah, 5th round. That's very incredible value for a guy that was pretty good the second half of last season. So I think that was a heck of a pick by Kilgore Trout.
Todd?
Demaryius Thomas, that was a good one where, especially in the third round for Thomas, obviously, previous years with Peyton Manning attached to him, it was a lot higher than that as well. But probably the biggest was Tyler Eifert. Now, obviously, I know he's hurt, but the fact that he went in the 8th round, he's going to be that second option next to A.J. Green. He can all fit. He can line up as he's a tight end, but you can line him up as a wide receiver, and and last year before he got hurt, he did produce. So I like the Tyler Eifert pick in the 8th round.
What do you think about Tyler Eifert, Mikey?
I wasn't very high on him at all. That injury worries me. I wouldn't have taken him in the 8th round. I had him much, much lower than that. So I disagree with Todd.
Josh Gordon went in the 8th round. I thought that was a solid place for him. Guys that kind of went after him were like Devontae Parker, Tyler Lockett, Tavon Austin, Steve Smith. Maybe I like Lockett a little bit more than Josh Gordon. But if you're going to take a chance on a guy who could possibly be the number 1, obviously you don't have him for the first 4 games. I thought that was a good place for him. I'm not big on him. I was hoping I didn't have to make the decision on him, but I didn't think that was a terrible place for him to go either.
No, we talked about that. It's just you had to be willing to kind of take that risk on him, and Kilgore Trout was, and he's got 3 really good receivers in front of him. So, for him, it's definitely worth that risk.
I will say I like Aaron's Jimmy Graham pick. I know I'm not a big fan of his, but he did pick Dwayne Allen, who I was high on. So if something were to happen, if you're talking about lottery tickets, he drafted him. What round did he pick him out here? In the 13th round. So if you're talking about lottery pick, if somehow he figures it out, great, that's wonderful. But if he shits the bed, Dwayne Allen, who I actually had higher than Jimmy Graham in my rankings, I think he's more of a sturdy tight end. So he backed up that pick really well in case that pick doesn't work. So I thought that was a good pick.
Yeah, if it works,
if it works. But if it doesn't, he didn't lose that much. Like, the upside is really high if it ends up somehow panning out, but the floor isn't bad because the floor is Dwayne Allen. That'll pick him up. That just stood out to me. It's hard to find some guys here late in the draft. I'll say my Andy Dalton backup quarterback is incredible. We're not here to talk about our own guys, but you guys, there's how many just awful quarterbacks went before him. For me to see Andy Dalton as my backup as my 13th overall, I thought that was like, Matt Ryan, I'm not really high on. You're talking about RG3 is probably one of the worst picks in the entire draft. He shouldn't have been drafted at all, in my opinion. We talked about this before, just hanging around. Let's go to the worst picks.
Well, listen, you would be wise to keep your distance from him.
Why? He seems harmless.
Oh, he's not. He's very harmful.
Really?
Oh, trust me. He's a bad seed. He's a horrible seed. He's one of the worst seeds I've ever seen.
And we already talked about Edelman, but we'll talk about another guy that Belt Sanders picked, and that was Denver's defense in the 5th round. And go for it. Yikes.
Yeah.
floored. I mean, if that Adrian Peterson was something surprising, this was probably the second most surprising pick of the draft.
I love the Broncos. We all are Broncos fans.
And he's not a Bronco fan. He's a 49er fan.
Yeah, he's a 49ers fan. So he's probably thinking, well, this is what my 49ers defense used to look like. But not the 5th round. I mean, yeah, I know his Denver defense put up a lot of points last season. That's great, but
Aaron's over here chiming that he thinks Denver's defense will have more points per week than Julian Edelman.
And that's possible, but here is why it's a bad pick. It's a bad pick because he took Denver in round 5 when if he really, really wanted him that badly, he could have waited 2 to 3 more rounds and, picked up some more depth for his team. That's why it's a bad pick.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. For Denver could be the number 1 pick, but you know how hard it is to pick the top. I mean, if you're picking Denver as your top scoring defense, at least so you think it is, you're picking them so they score more points than any other defense, right? And that is super difficult, and that leads us to our MHA trivia.
Hey! Who wants to have some fun? I do. Now, you just saying you want to have fun, or do you really want to have fun?
I really want to have fun.
I'm just saying I want to have some fun.
See how that segue worked right into there? Did it all myself. Thank you. Okay, so in the last 2 years, the top 5 scoring defenses in our league, in our scoring system, how many do you think finished in the top 10? So I just took the top 5 in 2014, the top 5 scoring, and this is at the end of the year, so this is where they finished, okay? They finished 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How many do you think of those finished in the top, or were drafted in the top 10? Oh, no, let me figure out how I'm going to ask this question here. What do you think? All right, let's do it this way. What do you think they averaged where they were drafted? Give me an ADP of where you think they were drafted. So 10 defenses that ended up finishing as the top defenses. Where do you think they averaged being drafted?
I'm going to say round 13.
Round 12.
It's 12. And that's with 4, 4 of those weren't even drafted. 4 of those defenses weren't even drafted. If you talk about 2014, Philly was the best scoring defense, not drafted. Buffalo was second, not drafted. LA Rams, or not LA Rams anymore, 12th. Okay, Baltimore, not drafted. Kansas City drafted 15th. 2015, Kansas City was the highest scoring team, 14th round. Seattle, which was at that time the highest overall drafted, and it was the 8th round. They finished second, so that kind of worked out. Denver finished third at 205. They were drafted in the 11th round. Arizona was 4th, 13th round, and then Minnesota was 5th, not drafted. So it just goes to show that you could draft the team you think possibly could be there, but it doesn't always pan out that way.
Yeah, I agree. It's a crazy selection at that point in the draft.
Yeah, because you look at the teams and you look at how their defenses are constructed, and you think, I need to draft this defense high because they're going to score a lot of points. Okay, great, but how does the rest of your team look? I mean, unless you're going to tell me Denver's defense is going to put up 30 to 40 points every single week, no.
Yeah, and I'll go through this real quick too as well. In 2014, the highest drafted team defense was Seattle. They finished 8th. The second highest team, or the second defense drafted in 2014 was Cincinnati. They finished 14th after going in the 10th round. In the 10th round, San Francisco was drafted. They finished 12th overall. Last year was a little bit different as Seattle, who was the first defense picked, they finished 2nd overall. Denver was drafted as the second one in the 11th round. They finished 3rd overall. And Buffalo was the 3rd defense picked in the 11th round, and they finished 23rd overall. So it's a crapshoot. You're flipping coins, you're rolling dice, you're throwing darts at a board, and hopefully that they pan out. I mean, it's great to have kind of that, the comfortability knowing you have someone there, but it's not worth the depth that you could have picked. And the last thing I'll say about defenses, if you talk about last year when G selected Seattle in the 9th round, he missed out on guys as Devonta Freeman, who finished obviously number 1 in running backs, and Danny Woodhead as well. So there's guys you can pick and take chances on and have a better season or have better luck and then find a defense that scores, maybe 15 points less than Denver? I don't know. It's a little crazy. All right, what else is there? What other tough picks did you see out there? Well, we could stay with Allen and go with Gostkowski in the 10th. I thought that was a little nutty.
There's a number of Allens. Jonathan Stewart was one that Belt Sanders made in round 4 that I could not believe. I thought was an incredible reach for a guy that doesn't score any touchdowns.
Not to mention he's on his last legs, and Cam Newton scores more rushing touchdowns than Stewart does.
Sure. And so since I gave you some praise a little bit earlier, then I'll.
Here we go.
Yeah, here we go.
Here we go.
I'm going to have to give you a little criticism. I thought that you reached a little bit on Gio Bernard.
No way.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to criticize my Devonta Booker. That Giovanni Bernard pick is one of my best picks.
I disagree with you.
Oh, my goodness. This guy is catching 60 passes a year. He's rushing for 400 or 500 yards. He doesn't have to score 10 touchdowns if he's getting 70 catches.
Yeah, you're right. He might not score any touchdowns.
Oh, come on now. I love that pick.
Well, I hope you do love it when he's scoring you 6 or 7 points a week.
Oh, he's not that bad. Oh, dear Lord. I mean, especially as bad as Jeremy Hill was at the beginning of last year, that dude was averaging 12 or 13 points a week.
He's a guy.
They had to rely on him more than Jeremy Hill did. Jeremy Hill did nothing but score touchdowns at the 1-yard line. They give him the ball. But he did everything else in between the 20s. Where's my sheet
Don't
at?
come to me in week 5 or 6.
Where's my sheet at?
And say, man.
You know how thrilled I was with that pick, and you're judging it. I am so angry at you right now.
You're going to be even more angry at yourself by midseason, trust me.
I can't find my running back rankings on me, but.
The other one, I think I mentioned a little bit earlier, I thought that Aaron reached on Stephon Diggs. I just think at that round that he might have been available a little bit later. There, I mean, I thought there were some receivers that went below him that probably should have went before Diggs.
Name a couple of those for.
John Brown's one of them. Alan Hearns is another one that went after. I told Aaron that I liked Devontae Parker better than I like Stephon Diggs. So yeah, there's a few of them.
Well, what about your Frank Gore pick there? I mean, I know Frank Gore seems like he just keeps on just keeps running through, but. He didn't have that great a season last year. I mean, the 7th round. I mean, obviously, I can respect with Frank Gore because Frank Gore helped me win a championship. But Frank Gore ain't Adrian Peterson. And I just think now I'm not saying Frank Gore would have been a bad choice to be on the team, but I just think you probably could have gotten him. Maybe either the next 2 rounds, the 9th or 10th round.
That wouldn't have been the case because Kilgore Trout says that Mikey stole Frank Gore. He was hoping he'd fall to him at that pick, and so that would not have been the case.
That's right. And then think about this when you're looking at Frank Gore on my team. He's the 4th running back on my team. So, honestly, how bad could that be? And then he's also the 28th or 29th running back that was taken. I mean, where would you have had him in your rankings?
I mean, I would have just because I just think
we know you didn't have him 29th.
Well, I know, yeah. Well, yeah, we know that. When we get to my worst pick, well, yeah, I'll tell you who that is. But I just think I don't know, 7th round. I mean, I know he's your fourth running back on your team, but I don't know the way he played last year. I mean, I know, granted, it was a lot of other variables, Andrew Luck being hurt and that offensive line just being god awful. But I don't know. Maybe I'm just not high on Frank Gore as much as I used to.
Well, okay. If you're, and it's not, I can accept the criticism on it. But I'm just looking at the running backs. If you're going to say that he should have gone in the 8th or 9th round, what running back should have gone before him? There's only really one that I can see that maybe I would say, Chris Ivory. But who else that went after him should have gone, before him?
I would have maybe gone with, and he's proven it a little bit, but T.J. Yeldon maybe.
Oh, you're kidding me. But go ahead. Tell me why.
A little bit younger. I mean, obviously, I know he might be in a timeshare with Chris Ivory, but I mean, he definitely showed. His little flashes last year of some great plays. I mean, I had him on my team last year, and definitely did. But again, I know sometimes the words that come out of my mouth. Sometimes you go, "Oh." Why?
Sometimes.
Well,
a lot of times.
I know. Sure, a lot of times. But I don't know. Maybe I'm just not as high on Frank Gore as high as I used to be. But
what do you guys think about Arian Foster and about where he went?
Reach.
High risk, high reward.
Is it a high or high reward type of scenario? I don't know.
If he can be anything close to what he was in Houston, maybe not 100%, but if you can get him to the 80-70% range that he was, kind of and God knows the Dolphins need it.
He could have waited on him and probably still got him.
Yeah.
There's other guys. That I had. We all have our thoughts on which draft guys, but there's a ton of guys, at least even running back wise, that thought he could have picked before Arian Foster. But he has the high ceiling for Arian Foster if things go well for him. But I thought that was a little bit of a reach for sure. I mentioned Torrey Smith. I think that's just an awful. He shouldn't have been drafted at all. But that's just me not appreciating Torrey Smith.
I don't know about it at all, but
I would take Tajay Sharp, and he was the last guy drafted in the whole thing. So
I agree with you that it shouldn't have been the 10th round.
So other tough ones. I thought. There was a lot of irrelevant running backs that got drafted. Alfred Morris, C.J. Spiller, Sean Drone, Reggie fucking Bush. Yeah, I'm gonna say Reggie fucking Bush. Now, it's one thing if he was a third-string running back. He's like the 6th running back on that team. There's no reason Reggie Bush. That was just a homer pick, and he kind of even said, it's my USC boy, and he shouldn't have been drafted.
Kadeem Carey.
Yep, Kadeem Carey's another one. I'm not big on Chris Thompson, but I guess he's going to be the number 2. He's more of a scat back, so I would assume Keith Marshall would actually be the number 2 once it's all said and done. But, there was a lot of running backs I thought, why are you even being mentioned? C.J. Spiller went before Tim Hightower. Did anybody not see what Tim Hightower did last year? He won a majority of teams' championships. I got to the championship. I didn't win, but there's a stat somewhere that had, percentage of teams that had who they had on their championship teams, and Tim Hightower was one of them. So if you're going to go with one of them, C.J. Spiller hasn't done poo.
Yeah,
hasn't done poo in 4 or 5 years.
He's more of a name, That's all that is.
So I guess that. I don't know. We mentioned Ladarius Green. That's a tough situation for Ladarius Green. We hope everything goes okay with him in that situation. But it was even mentioned at the draft that he was probably going to retire. And I think Robbie was focused on something else and ended up drafting him. He did get Gates 2 rounds later. So then he paid the punishment already, having to go with 2 tight ends in 3 rounds, especially in the 9th and 11th rounds. So that's pretty tough. Anything else? Anything else, guys? Anything else that stood out from you in this draft? No, nothing else. Two defenses. Is there something else we can get on, Alan? It's one thing to have a defense early. It's another to have a backup defense.
Sure, and he drafted him in the 13th round, his second defense. That's crazy.
And yet both those defenses play in the same division too.
They do, and we check to see if they don't have the same bye, so that's something. They play Tampa. Kansas City plays Tampa when Denver has their bye, so I guess that's the reasoning behind it. But at the end of the day, you don't need to.
Roster spot.
Exactly. There's a lot of guys. DeAndre Washington, I would have on my team. I would have taken Jerick McKinnon on my team. And I'm just going down C.J. Prosise. I had Jordan Howard, Josh Doxson, Brandon LaFell. Just about everybody else. Just other than Reggie Bush. I wouldn't take a Reggie Bush. I would have taken Kansas City's defense over Reggie Bush at the end of the day. But, yeah, we love you, Alan. But that was a tough draft, my friend. That was a tough draft for you.
That kicker in round 10, too. We didn't even talk
I understand Gostkowski is the top kicker, but there's no reason to draft a top kicker.
Especially not with Jimmy G moving that offense the first 4 weeks.
And against Cardinals in week 1.
Yeah.
So we've talked about some of the picks we like. Is Sammy Watkins the steal of the draft, the sleeper pick of the draft? Demaryius Thomas was kind of mentioned as well.
Yeah, at least in my mind, I think Sammy Watkins was definitely more of a steal than Demaryius Thomas. I think a case could be made that Watkins and DT could have similar statistics, and if you're looking at them, DT went 2 rounds ahead of him. So
yeah, Demaryius Thomas is one of them. Someone even mentioned Aaron Rodgers in the 2nd round. This is tough to agree with there. He's a good quarterback, don't get me wrong, but in terms of steals, you could have probably waited.
Yeah, and here's one we didn't talk about, but one that, depending on what happens with Le'Veon Bell, D'Angelo Williams in round 9 for Ryan could potentially be a really, really big steal.
Yeah, and that was the player I was looking at and was thinking about obviously drafting. and Ryan drafted him before me. But yeah, DeAndre Williams definitely. You get it. I mean, he proved last season, when Le'Veon Bell was out, that he can get in the end zone. He can get in the end zone and get those yardage. So it's not like they're just pulling like a rookie. That they got drafted in the 6th or 7th round, or a running back they found off the street. DeAndre Williams has proven, he can carry the load. So
this is who Aaron had as his fantasy steal of the draft, Jameis Winston, and this is why. This is what he says. I mean, he's probably stealing crab legs right now as we speak. So that's why he thinks Jameis Winston is the steal of the draft, because he's out there stealing. I was clever. I just wanted to mention that.
That's good.
So that's the let's talk about which teams that we liked as a whole. Which teams that you think stood out to you and has a leg up on the competition. Now it's a long season. People get injured. Waiver wire guys need to be picked up. But at least on paper, who do you like, or who are the top couple teams that is not you? Because we know Mikey, you'll be like, oh, it's me. I'm winning a championship. We ain't talking about you. We're not. I could talk about you. Todd could talk about you, but. Go ahead, Mikey. Who do you think had a really good draft, or a couple guys?
At least if I'm looking at the first 5 rounds, which is kind of what I did, I think you could make a case that Kilgore Trout probably had that. When you look at their top 5 players, Breeze, Elliott, Nelson, Hilton, and Watkins, that's pretty good right there.
I agree.
I think that can stack up against what anybody else did in the first 5 rounds.
Supreme clientele, obviously getting Brown, Cooks, McCoy, and Decker. That's pretty good. You have 2 top, top tier one by himself, Antonio Brown, and then you got Cooks, and then high power offense. And you got Decker on the other side of Marshall, and then you throw McCoy in there as well. So yeah, Supreme clientele, I think, had a really good draft.
I agree. Those were my top 2, and what I did, and I'll let you guys look at afterwards, actually kind of went through what their depth chart looks like, or at least what their starting lineup would look like, just based on where they drafted guys. So I didn't have anybody really past the 8th round, 9th round, unless they ended up going like 4 running backs, and so I didn't use one of their running backs because you can only use 2 in a flex. But I mean, those are the guys that stand out. Kilgore Trout, obviously Rashad Jennings is kind of questionable, but man, if Elliott pans out, and Hilton and Nelson, and I mean, you've got Kelsey too if you like him. I'll try to go outside the box here. I thought Notorious CP was solid. I mean, he got Stafford pretty late. If you're a Stafford fan, Forte and Foster are a little questionable at running backs. But then if Des Bryant pans out, Allen Robinson, Alshon Jeffrey, and Delanie Walker, I mean, he doesn't have a kicker or defense right now, so that kind of hurts him. But I wasn't looking at kickers and defense because they're pretty much interchangeable. But I thought he had a pretty good draft. And
yeah, but if you weren't looking at defense, then that took Allen out of the equation.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. Gonzo Katz was pretty solid. Derek Carr, depending on where you put him. I mean, you get Devontae Freeman, Eddie Lacy. That's a pretty good 1-2 punch. Hopkins, Baldwin. I'm not big on Langford or Hearns, depending on where he puts at his flex, but then he has Jordan Reed, too. So I thought he did all right.
Yeah.
It seems like it was pretty even around the board, honestly. I mean, Allen's got a pretty tough team. Todd could use a little bit of help. I mean, you have good parts in there. You got your Palmer. I mean, Gurley could be better than Adrian Peterson when it's all said and done this end of the year. We know Deion Lewis was pretty tough. I'm not a big Emmanuel Sanders fan, but that's just because I'm not a big Broncos fan. I'm a big Broncos fan, but not a fantasy fan of the Broncos. And we'll see where Matt Jones. And Matt Jones has got volume. So, and Greg Olsen, I like too. I was hoping, I almost drafted him at one point, but I wanted to get Bernard instead, and someone just yelled at me. Because
right. Well, and I liked what Todd did too. My only thing with Todd was I think you could have taken, so his round 3, 4, and 5 guy, Deion Lewis, Emmanuel Sanders, Matt Jones, you could honestly put them around down in each person's case, and then he could have taken somebody else ahead of him and still gotten those 3 guys 1 round later than he drafted them, in my opinion.
So you think Sanders would have been, if I maybe would have waited on Sanders to like maybe one round after like the 5th or 6th round? Because
after the 5th, because I mean, look who's there. I mean, Watkins, Benjamin, Baldwin. I think Sanders is easily in that round of guys.
Yeah, and I think Deion Lewis would have slipped you in round 4.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Matt Jones.
And then you could have gotten someone like Ezekiel Elliott or Lamar Miller or Brandon Cooks, depending on who you like. But yeah, I'm with that. I understand that. Okay. So let's talk about our own teams, and I want to start with Mikey. I know Mikey's been giving a lot of criticism, but let's talk about that quarterback situation. Now, I'm not going to totally blame you because people get ridiculous with their backup quarterbacks. But I think you kind of had to know that going in. So I'm sure Kirk Cousins was not the goal for your first quarterback. So what happened? Who picked someone where that had to change your strategy and the way your quarterback situation ended up?
Honestly, it happened twice.
Okay.
It was Ryan both times. It happened. I was ready and set to take Tom Brady there in round 7. And then, Ryan went and took him one pick before me. And then again,
thus the panic Frank Gore pick. Okay, go on.
No, it wasn't a panic. It was just my next best guy available. That's all. And I didn't really panic on losing out on Brady. It's just I thought that round 7 was probably the right round to try and snag him, and Ryan did a good job of getting him before I did. The other one was with Eli Manning. He had slipped down to round 11, and again, that's right where I was getting ready to pick him, and that's where Ryan kind of grabbed him right before me. But I don't really, people can criticize, but I don't really panic at all. The way I look at it is once you get to a certain point, and after Eli Manning, that's where I was. I mean, any of those quarterbacks are pretty much the same, whether I got Stafford or Romo or Ryan or Bortles or Derek Carr.
RG3.
No, I don't include him.
Okay.
But it's pretty much the same. So after he went, I pretty much said, well, I can continue just drafting depth because I wasn't really worried about Kirk Cousins going any higher than I took him.
Okay.
And what I like about the two guys that I got is both of them were kind of the story of the offseason in the fact that their teams weren't willing to trust them enough.
Yeah, they're motivated.
To, give them more than a 1-year deal. Yeah. So here we go again. Yeah, there's motivation for them to hopefully match what they did last year.
But I will say that you've been a non-Ryan Fitzpatrick fan since before we started the podcast. Because you were saying, well, I think he wants too much money. He doesn't deserve that money. He had one good year.
Yeah.
And now it's like, well, I like my guy.
Well, I mean, and he is my backup, bear in mind. But, he did have a really good year, and he did because of the weapons around him. He still has those same weapons around him. He still has Brandon Marshall. He still has Eric Decker. Now he has Matt Forte, and Bilal Powell. So he's in a really good offense. If he was somewhere else, he wouldn't be as good a quarterback as he is.
Agreed.
He's the type of guy where he's not like Aaron Rodgers, where Aaron Rodgers, you can plug him in on any team and he's still going to be Aaron Rodgers. No, Ryan Fitzpatrick is good because the team that he's on and the weapons around him.
What else do you have to say about your team? I mean, you gave 1 to 10, and I will say most people either gave themselves 8s or 9s. I will say Joe Vaccarelli was pretty humble in his 6 number of his 1 through 10, and we all pretty much said he had one of the better drafts. So Joe being very humble. But what number do you give yourself?
I mean,
11, 12, 13,
yeah,
25,
20,
right around there. No, what I would say is I was really proud of what I did in the second half of the draft. I made a mention before we did this podcast. It seemed like a lot of people took a dump, before drafting in the second half of this draft, and I felt like I got a lot of guys that have tremendous upside on my bench, and Sammy Coates and Josh Doxson and Bilal Powell. So I was very happy to get those guys. But not only that, I mean, I'm really happy with the 3 top receivers I have, having, Odell Beckham and Mike Evans and Randall Cobb, who I think is in pretty good spot for a bounce-back year.
Yeah, I agree. I thought your team was really good. I mean, Lamar Miller falling is just a blessing in disguise for you, I would say. And we'll see how Julius Thomas ends up. But you have Gary Barnidge right behind him in case he ends up not panning out or if the offense takes a slower pace because they're actually in games. But we'll see how that goes. Todd, talk about your team a little bit. What went right for you? What went wrong? Or is there a decision you would and besides some of the things we already talked about, but just give us some of your thoughts on your team.
I mean, obviously, even with the first pick, obviously with Peterson going first, I kind of had the options opened up a little bit between Todd Gurley and DeAndre Hopkins. Obviously, we talked about, wide receivers being so big this year, but again, I still go back to it, and I'll, say it to the end of time, but, running backs in our league are just not a dime a dozen, and that just sometimes scares the crap out of me when I'm trying to go through the waiver wire. So when Todd Gurley was right there, and knowing what he did last season and where his ceiling is and what he can potentially be, that was no brainer there. Going back, I mean, obviously the Keenan Allen pick I liked as well too. He was Philip Rivers' safety blanket, and obviously when we got to the Deion Lewis pick, I mean that's kind of a high risk, high reward. I know Patriots running backs, it's like a rotation. It's you don't know who's going to be in there, but when he was in there last season, he caught a lot of passes, and that's in our league. That's what you want to do happen. And then I like my Greg Olsen pick as well. In the 6th round, obviously he was I think the 3rd rated tight end I think in the rankings. So I was glad to get him in the 6th round as well. Obviously, as I said, I got Carson Palmer, so I'm happy about that. But I waited. You all probably
you did wait. I was surprised.
You waited. I mean, I thought I was going to get him, in the probably the 5th round, probably something like that. But I waited, and because I didn't think anybody else was probably going to draft him, as many people were waiting on quarterbacks as well. Probably the one pick that I was hesitant a little bit about, but maybe in my mind was the best player right there available. Maybe was Devin Funchess.
I thought that was a good pick.
I know they've been saying, I've been reading that he might outproduce Kelvin Benjamin. Just because and obviously that was coming from Cam Newton, just because of what he's been doing in training camp and everything like that. He's he's a big physical wide receiver, and it gives Cam Newton another weapon. So, I wasn't really sure about that one, but if he does, because last year I had him a couple times on my team, and he did absolutely nothing. But obviously Cam Newton was doing everything pretty much, in short of kicking the field goals last year for that team, for the Panthers. So, if that pick works out, then great. And then, and obviously, going back, probably my backup quarterback. I mean, obviously, we don't talk, you don't talk about backups as much, but Matt Ryan. I mean, and they were kind of saying Yahoo, with their wisdom, of course, saying it was kind of a coin flip between Ryan and Palmer, because they're both kind of, similar. They do both have high-powered offenses.
Wait, whoa. You talking about between Carson Palmer and Matt Ryan?
That's what.
You are insane.
Well, that's what.
The Falcons don't have a high-flying offense. They have Julio Jones.
Maybe he's saying because Falcons and Cardinals are both birds.
And they actually do fly? Okay.
Right.
I got you. I'm with you, Todd.
Great.
Birds of a feather flock together. I got you. Okay, go ahead.
All right. And then
I don't know why we're talking about Matt Ryan, but all right, whatever.
I know. But okay. And then
Darren Sproles
in the 9th round
catches passes. He catches passes. I'm gonna hope, maybe like on bye weeks if I have to just put him in, but he catches a lot of passes. He gets a lot of touchdowns, especially in that offense and everything. Yeah, I mean, it's 9th round. Yes, I know. I probably could have waited, but
you probably could have waited till like the 13th or 14th round.
Yeah,
he caught 55 passes last year in 16 games, no less. 40 the previous year in 15. And 2 years ago, he did have 71, but that was with New Orleans.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that I think people overrate because, he has these 1 or 2 games during the season where he's just like gangbusters. Like, wow, that guy's great.
And he'll return occasional punt return for touchdown,
but
too.
But then you don't realize that the rest of the season, he's really kind of below average. And you don't know what his role in this offense is going to be. They also have Wendell Smallwood over there.
Yep.
So that one was a tough one for me. But if you like him, you like him.
Yeah, but other than that, there wasn't, there wasn't really any picks that I was hesitant about that I was actually really happy about. I'm really happy about my first 5 picks. We talked about before. The Deion Lewis, that's probably, we said the high risk, high reward. If he can get healthy and, and they manage him right, I hit a home run on that one, so
I disagree.
Well, of course,
I was so surprised. I was so surprised that Deion Lewis went before Eddie Lacy. Demaryius
crazy.
Thomas.
Well, with Eddie Lacy, let me see if he'll do his job and not eat cheeseburgers.
Now that's a high flying offense. With Aaron Rodgers, they're going to get inside the one. They're going to give it to big hefty boy, and he's going to fall. And John Kuhn's gone too. That's one of the steals from me. I wanted Eddie Lacy. I was like, oh, man, Eddie Lacy, this is going to be spectacular. And Gonzo Cat swiped him up, and so I think he's going to be good. He's going to catch passes, too. I know he had a rough year last year, But they have no choice really but to go to him. James Starks is not who they want to be handing that ball off to. So.
But Jordy Nelson's also back in that offense, too.
Yeah, so he was good when Jordy Nelson was in there 2 years ago.
I actually think that helps him. Because
Yeah.
having that deep threat, it'll allow, you won't have all those people pressed up against the line of scrimmage, waiting for Eddie Lacy to run. Green Bay's offense wasn't Green Bay's offense without that deep threat in Jordy Nelson. It's going to help Eddie Lacy.
You know how good Eddie Lacy was with Jordy Nelson last year? 1,100 yards, rushing 9 touchdowns, 42 catches, 427 yards, and 4 receiving touchdowns. That was with Jordy Nelson.
Yeah.
So I was super. I was one of the disappointments. Okay, I'll quickly go through my team since Todd took up all my time. I have the best 2 receivers in the league. I'm just telling you that now. I know Quayne has Des Bryant and Allen Robinson, but I was just thrilled. In a PPR system, I have guys that, especially A.J. Green's going to get more targets this year with those guys gone on the other side, and Brandon Marshall's situation doesn't change. I'm super thrilled with that. I took Rawls over Alshon Jeffrey or Matt Forte. I loved what I saw from him, and I just hope he stays healthy. Because if he is, I think he's going to be great. But he doesn't catch passes, which is the tough part. The C.J. Anderson pick I really love. I actually, and I'm not afraid to say this out loud, I actually had Danny Woodhead above C.J. Anderson in my rankings. And whatever reason, I just couldn't do it at that point. I was thinking, well, maybe I'm overthinking it, and maybe I can get Danny Woodhead on the way back. That obviously didn't happen, but I'm still stoked to get C.J. Anderson, as you already mentioned, that great offense, or in that type of offense where he's going to be the main guy as long as he stays healthy. Thus, I picked Devontae Booker in case it doesn't happen, and I know I was a little buzzed and worried at the time when that happened when I picked Devontae Booker in the 10th, but I'm okay with it. I can live with it. I'm super stoked. I was, at this point, 2 years or last year in the draft, in the 5th and 6th rounds, I went quarterback and tight end. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to wait and see what I can get here. And I got Jerry Maclin, who I think is an amazing flex player. He's a number 1 guy. He's by far the number 1 wide receiver in Kansas City. Do they throw it all the time? No, but he's a guy for the last 3 or 4 years, has been getting 8 to 10 touchdowns, 70 to 80 catches. And I was super thrilled to get him at that point. I was hoping that maybe – I don't know. I guess I was on the fence. I was between Benjamin and Baldwin and Maclin, but I'm happy to get Maclin. I love my Bernard pick. Mikey doesn't. We already talked about it. I'm happy with Phillip Rivers, who was our number 4-5 quarterback last year. I know we had that conversation with Quayne. Like Quayne was trying to think of who I was going to pick, and he said between Walker and I forget who the other guy was, or Melvin Gordon probably. And I said, well, I was thinking Delanie Walker and Phillip Rivers. So I went Rivers first. I should have known that he wouldn't take a quarterback till later, but he actually picked the tight end for me because it was between Fleener and Walker.
Yeah.
And so he ended up picking it for me, and I was like, okay, that's fine. And Fleener's got a huge upside in that offense, or he could do absolutely nothing, and I'll have to go pick up a backup tight end. So I love Willie Snead there, number 2 guy. I know everybody's talking about Michael Thomas, but I don't think he's going to overtake Snead. And I thought I had some good. I picked Kenneth Dixon, who I really like. Tyler Boyd.
That one.
Yeah, Kenneth Dixon at that point. Was that in the 11th round, it looks like. Mm-hmm. Super thrilled with that. Kamar Aiken, a PPR guy. I thought he fell pretty far. Jordan Howard, if Langford ends up screwing the pooch. And Andy Dalton, I've already mentioned. And I thought it was overall. I'd still give myself an 8. I'm worried about Thomas Rawls. Did I reach on Booker? I don't know, but I have a backup to C.J. Anderson, and I'm okay with that. So I gave myself an 8. I thought my draft was pretty solid.
I agree, and the good thing is because you have Maclin as a flex, you won't have to worry about playing Bernard every week.
Oh, I can't believe you hate Bernard that much. You've had Bernard on your team before.
Yeah, now you know why.
Oh, my goodness. I'm stunned. I'm floored that you would say that. He's a PPR guy. He still ran for like 700 yards last year. He just doesn't get touchdowns.
All I'm saying.
No, Eric, why? You know why? Because he's a Tar Heel. That's why.
That is not the reason. No.
Maybe a little bit.
This isn't bad. I'm not a big Tar Heel football fan. I'm surprised they're even ranked in the top 25. I did notice that today. But I'm more of a college basketball fan. But so there's the draft. Is there anything else we say before we get out of here? I don't know if we're going to do shows during the season. They might have to be call-ins depending on how our schedules go. My schedule obviously gets crazy. And Todd works, I know, a lot of nights. So we'll kind of see how this goes. We'll do our best. But overall, I thought it was a fun draft. Everybody seemed to have fun. We had the shot game. I thought that worked pretty well. Mikey didn't take a shot, but I was thinking about this because you had the sheet in front of you.
That had nothing to do with it.
I told you to manage that situation, so you ended up not taking a shot.
Well, that had nothing to do with it.
All right.
But something interesting that maybe we can do really quick
sure.
is Give a prediction for who you think is going to be in the championship game and who's going to win.
God, it doesn't end here. I mean, there's so many things that
Just based on the draft.
It's based on the draft.
I mean, obviously, in-season moves play a big role, but based on what you see, who do you think are the 2 top teams, and who do you think would win?
Where's my paper at? Can't find my papers. I got papers everywhere. Okay. I mean, I said the top 2 teams based on what I see here are Supreme Clientele and Kilgore Trout. They have the least amount of questions. I mean, the biggest question for Clientele I see is Zach Ertz. I mean, he had a really good end to last year. He had a really good end to 2 years ago. But can he put it together for a full season? I'm not a big Rashad Jennings guy, but he is a number 1 running back if things pan out. But the rest of the rosters look really good. Even with Clientele, who has Brady for the first 4 weeks suspended, he's got Eli Manning, and Eli Manning has an easy schedule in the first 4 weeks. You know, Drew Brees pans out, that's a stupid question. He'll pan out. If Ezekiel Elliott pans out, if Nelson stays healthy, he's got a really good team too. So I mean, those are the 2. That's who I think would be in the championship. Would be those 2.
Yeah,
I would say Aaron's team if Le'Veon Bell comes back. Le'Veon Bell and David Johnson and Aaron Rodgers. That's right there. That's a good 1, 2, 3 punch right there.
I mean, his wide receivers would have to really pan out, though. I mean, if Fitzgerald can get another 100 receptions and, you know, be in that 6 to 7 touchdown range, Jimmy Graham has to pan out as well. I mean, to have Rodgers, Johnson, and Bell, he's going to be in the mix. I'll tell you that. I mean, those guys are incredible if they're both there at the end of the season, which they should.
Yeah. All I got to say is 15th season, this is the way it's going down. Me against you. Lemonheads, hot tamales, championship. I take you down. Trophy number 4.
Trophy number 4. All right. Yeah. I'd be happy to be in the championship game, but to see you in that situation, yank it from me, I would be pretty. That would be a scar. That would be a scar for sure. But
I don't like that. I don't like that.
You don't like that? That'd be a great story, though. Isn't that what we're about as journalists? Is great stories.
True. But I would rather be me versus Mikey again, and
well, a lot of
get my 3rd championship and deny him his 4th. So to some degree, yes, you'd be like, oh man, Todd won it again, but Mikey didn't get his 4th.
Well, there you go.
All
2016 MHA draft. It was fun. It was fun talking about it. Fun looking back on it. Now it's about just staying with it. We still have a long time for the season starts. Things are going to change. Depth charts are going to change. Injuries are going to change where people are going to go in terms of where they end up and whether they hurt someone's team going forward. But it's about staying with that waiver wire, paying attention to that sort of stuff, and then just be ready every week to put your guys in and be smart about it. That's what it's all about, right?
That's right.
This is just one aspect of it. While you could lose your championship hopes at the draft, like we know one of these teams, it's more about winning it during the season. Nothing ever ends up staying the same.
Yep, it's a week-to-week battle.
Yes, sir.
Yep.
Well, guys, thanks for joining me here on the MHA podcast to talk about the post-draft. And we'll email you guys if we decide to do another if we do want to do more shows throughout. When we'd like to, but schedules get crazy. So from Eric Lansing here, Mikey Renault, Todd Diamond, the cat that's running around here, and, of course, Aaron who's hanging around. We'll see you next time on the MHA podcast.